Hey folks, thanks for checking out the Wait What If podcast. I am your host, Kevin Sullivan. Tonight we have a very special guest, Paul Adams. Paul Adams is I'm going to call him a scholar / philosopher / theologian. I don't know what he would call himself. I think if I asked him what he called himself, he would probably go into some long philosophical, theological explanation of what he is. But I think he's retired, actually. Maybe he'll call himself retired if you asked him. Anyways, so I have this conflict in my head about morality. What is morality? You know, if you have a car that is twice the car that you can own, so you're spending twice as much on it, but you don't really need that all that car, and that money could go to, say, feeding a starving family each month. Is that a moral thing to do, to drive the car? Or are you literally taking food out of the mouths of starving people? Other things would be, suppose you have empty bedrooms in your house, yet there's people in Africa who are homeless, or even people in your own neighborhood that are homeless, or town or city or whatever. So I have these questions. I'm wondering, how people can call themselves moral when we live in all these luxuries and there's still suffering in the world. And I wanted to get his take on it, since he's a philosopher, theologian, retiree. So without further ado, if you can hear, we're outside, of course. Whenever I record outside, dogs start to bark, car alarms go off, the birds start going crazy. It's just the way it is. My neighbor's AC unit goes on, so I apologize for the background noise, but that's the ambiance of these outdoor conversations. Check out waitwhatif.com for bios, articles, all sorts of wonderful things. I write stuff on there. I put all my past episodes, links to guests' profiles and web pages. So if you're listening to the podcast, swing over to waitwhatif.com and check that out, because I put it up for you. Thanks.
You're listening to the Wait What If podcast.
We're about to blow stuff up.
I'm gonna open up with a general question.
Okay.
And you're gonna laugh, but I'm leading us hopefully in a direction. What is morality?
What is morality?
Like, if you were to walk onto any street, and I've been wanting to do this with my podcast. Next time there's like a Clayton Days, I want to set up a booth and just ask people stuff, and just to see what kind of sound bites I get. But that'd be something, if you grabbed people off the street,
Yeah.
Are you a moral person? What is morality? Well, it's to do good. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sure.
so are you a moral person? Yes.
Yeah. I would say it's doing good is limited.
Mm-hmm.
Is a narrow definition.
Mm-hmm.
Morality, and I'm thinking in Aristotle's terms here, is flourishing.
Okay.
Being, to quote the Army's old commercial, being all that you can be.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, when my dog is chasing down a rat in Manchester, England, which is what it was bred to do,
Mm-hmm.
it is being a moral thing, in a sense that it's flourishing. It is experiencing the height of all that it was designed to be and
Okay.
do. So morality is pursuing that which causes the person, human person, to flourish, or the dog, or the plant.
Mm-hmm. So plants, dogs can be moral? Plants
can be moral in a sense that they can flourish. They can have an apex.
Which I don't mean to cut you off, but which makes sense, because nature can be extremely violent, and there can be lots of suffering. But is it immoral? I don't think it is. I wouldn't say it is. I wouldn't say a wolf that eats a deer alive is acting immoral. It's kind of fitting into your definition, doing what it's meant to do.
Well, I'm trying to raise it to a different level rather than just talking about standards of right and wrong, good and bad, truth and error, but talking in terms of what were things designed to do? What, when I look at a tree and I say, oh, that tree is immoral because it can't see me. Well, it's not supposed to. It wasn't designed to see me, to have vision. But when I look at a person who's blind and I say, that's unfortunate, because that person was designed to see and to have vision, to take in through the sense perception, the world around him or her. And I would say that's, in the broadest sense, not moral. Because for it to be moral, then the person would have sight and would have hearing, would have taste, would have touch, and all the other senses.
So morality being whatever it is to be the best that it is, to flourish in whatever it does, be it a smoker or a cat or an individual. So in essence then, morality is universal.
In some sense, right. And that's the Hebrew mindset of the term shalom kind of captures it. Shalom simply means well-being. Okay. When everything's right with the world, everything's right with me, about me, everything's right and balanced with me in my relationships, everything's right and balanced with me in my environment, my physical environment that I'm with or around.
How do you know that you're flourishing? I mean, it seems to take, so if you're being the best that you can be, it seems to take any need for you to make sure others are being the best that they can be. Care to explain that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I think there is a relationship between me, my being right with the world. There's basically a relationship between me and myself. Okay, how I am in myself, how I am with myself and others, and then how I am with my physical surroundings. And when all of that is in sync, if you will, or finely tuned, then that's that sense of shalom. And so if I have angst in a relationship with, say, a neighbor, then there's a suboptimal circumstance here where things are not the best that they could be. And so it would seem to me that the burden would be on me, insofar as I can, to be at peace in that relationship and to pursue peace, even if it meant sacrifice.
How do you know you're being the best that you can be? Could there always be better? And if so, does that mean you're not moral?
What was the last question again?
So, say you're at a level where you say, this is great, I have a great job, I'm providing for my family, I'm a good neighbor, everything's going good, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, I'm healthy, I'm eating right, I feel good. But if there's more that you could do, which in general there always is, then you're never moral, you're never reaching, or there are levels of moral. You're at baseline moral, but you could be...
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, there is, I think, because the world is never optimal, neither is my environment ever optimal, neither is my physical well-being optimal.
So there's limitations.
Yeah, there are limitations. So learning how to manage and balance that, and managing that angst, that dissonance between myself and me, myself and others, myself and the environment, I think is in itself a sense of being moral and being good, even though things aren't optimal. In other words, things don't have to be optimal and then I know that I'm being a moral person. I can be a moral person in a suboptimal situation and seek to rectify and to reconcile wherever possible in those three relationships, in that matrix of relationships.
So I've brought this one up a few times. I'm still trying to get a good answer for it. There might not be a good answer for it. There might not be. And I know you've heard this before, but let's go to you step out your front door and there's a hungry child sitting at your doorstep and you step over him and get in your car and drive to work without giving him any notice. Could he die? Who knows? You chose not to help him. Now, the next day, you step out of your front door and there's no child there, but you know the child is there, right? It's the same child. He just didn't make it to your door. He might be 3 blocks away or 2 continents away, but the child is there. There's no question that there, as we speak right now, there is a child suffering from hunger that would give anything for food or love or whatever. Is the fact that we know that but aren't doing anything to alleviate that suffering or to help that individual. Is that an immoral act? And therefore we're not optimized. We're not being to our full potential.
I think in the idealistic sense, then I think that's true, that we're not living up to our potential morally. But I also think there's a lot more involved in a scenario like that. There has to be opportunity. I can know about something but not have opportunity to make a difference.
Right.
I can be equally as poor.
Right.
For example. And then I can know about something, have opportunity, but not care about it. Or I could not care about it and do it anyway, just so I don't have to look at it any further.
Right.
To get the child off my front step. Here, take this. So did I really do anything moral? For the child,
that's tricky. Yeah.
For the child, yes. But for myself, no. Consequently, insofar as I did it from the wrong motives in helping someone else, then there's a sense in which I haven't moved forward at all morally. I've probably actually become worse, if anything, but I certainly haven't moved forward if I didn't do it with the right heart, the right motivation. And that is to do it for the sake of the child only, not for any utilitarian sake, to get the child off the step or to alleviate the child's suffering. I just did it because it's the right thing to do, period.
Does that mean anything in excess that you have in excess makes you immoral? Like that you can possibly give up a name brand shoe or this or that to take that money and feed somebody? Think of it like I was raised Catholic, so obviously we always used Jesus as the hallmark of morality, who literally gave the shirt off his back. I mean, he gave his life. So that's the standard which Christians should live to. And I don't want this to be a theological thing, although it does play a role, just because it's a yardstick which we kind of compare what we do. But if living to attain a level of morality is if living, let's say you're a Christian, you want to live to be like Jesus. You should try to be like Jesus. And if you knowingly don't give the shirt off your back, generally, then are you in fact immoral? Could you ever say that you're moral? So, good example is, I was telling you, my pickup truck, right? I love my pickup truck. And it taps into being an 80s kid, right? 80s and 90s I was getting a little bit older, but 80s, it was the era of like Bigfoot and muscle cars and all that. So my truck is kind of a combination of that. Yeah. It's got the speed stripes for the muscle car in it, and it's a 4x4 pickup truck. It's everything it's just, but it's totally a toy. It's a toy. Yeah. And so I could buy half that truck and take that other half of the money and, I don't know, pay for a kid to have a medical procedure, whatever it is. I know I could find someone who could use that money. I know I could, but I choose not to. And in the eyes of whoever's judging me, it would be like, well,
I don't know. See, I think if you look at if you look at Jesus, he had a unique mission. No one else was called to do what he did. No one else is called to atone for their own sins. because the Christian story is that Jesus did that for everyone, you know. So I don't think everyone's called to be all and do all that Jesus did, because Jesus' mission was unique. Just as not everyone's called to have the mission of Martin Luther King. You know, he had a unique mission, and I think he accomplished it quite well. We've got a long way to go, obviously, sadly, but we've come a long way as well, thankfully, because one person had a unique mission. I don't think everyone is called to be all that. Moreover, as I understand the Christian story, there are plenty of passages in the Bible, both Old and New Testament, that encourage financial flourishing and enjoying the booty, you know, and the spoils of the day based on your labor. I could recount several passages that say that in the Bible. So, you know, how do you reconcile that with giving up everything? You know,
Well,
I don't know that we have to.
Do the passages say, in order to be good, you need to flourish? Or does it say, it's okay to flourish?
It says it's okay to flourish.
But it's not a necessity to flourish.
No, by
It can
no
be-
means.
Right.
No.
Because isn't that, there's the one about it's harder for a rich, or it's just as difficult for a rich man to enter heaven as it is for
A camel to go through the eye of a needle.
Right.
Right.
So, and then of course you could look at that and just say, well, it's saying someone who is a multi-billionaire who isn't, you know, who's stepping on people to get what they want. But I mean, that to me, that's you're using it to justify.
Well, what Jesus did throughout his 3-year ministry, and the Gospels bear this out, the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, is that, you know, Jesus got to the heart of the matter, literally. It wasn't about how much we had. It was about the heart behind what we had. And that's what Jesus was addressing when he talked about the camel and the eye and the needle and the rich man. Some folks took just a little too much pride in their earnings, you know, and they didn't recognize that it was from God that they got everything. Deuteronomy chapter 8 says, "Be careful that you do not forget the Lord your God, for when you eat and are satisfied, when you build your fine houses, then you will forget the Lord your God, who gave you the ability to produce wealth." Verses 11 through 17, chapter 8, Deuteronomy.
Okay.
So God gives us the ability to produce wealth. It's okay to enjoy it, but if we forget God in the process, then there's a problem. So it's not having the wealth that's the problem. It's forgetting God in the process. That's the Christian story.
Yeah, I just can't.
So-
I and it's been, I don't know when I first had this idea, but I can't shake the feeling that I can't call myself a good person until you, I mean, we're only on this earth for a short period of time, and if you're on this earth,
Notwithstanding
excess.
reincarnation.
right, that's true. If you're on this earth living in any sort of excess, I mean, what could you call excess? It's all a changing baseline too, because the way I live in North Carolina, I'd be a prince in, you know, East Africa.
Yeah.
I'd be living like a millionaire, yet, you know, I live in a middle-class neighborhood in this country. And so, you know, I just, my answer is I don't think about it, because I have my family to raise and I have my job and I have things I do.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously it does enter my mind that you know, if I'm purchasing things just because I fall within the market class of a certain product, I want the new, I think it's the Galaxy S10 that's coming out. I think it's, or maybe it's the S9. I don't know, whatever I would love that. I'm not going to buy it because it's like $1,000.
Yeah.
But, you know, given the extra money, would I get it? That'd be a nice fun toy. I love technology.
Yeah.
But that is absolutely, in my opinion, not a moral thing to do.
Yeah.
Because even the phones, I mean, then you can dissect your life pretty deeply. And you can say, you know, this smartphone I have right here, the S5, by the way, has things that guarantee, I mean, you can find that there's data that the precious, I think they're precious metals or whatever that are used to make the phones are gathered and
countries,
sold,
right.
through hardship.
Yeah, 8-year-old laborers. Yeah, sure.
So it's like, well, then in theory, we should all at least admit that we are living in Caligula,
Yeah.
and not that sense,
Yeah,
but you know what I
yeah.
mean. In our
This
own sort of
hedonistic,
right.
yeah.
So
Well-
we should all be doomed.
Yeah. Well, again, all of this talk about, someone has less than I do, I have more, I could give more, therefore I should give more.
Well, it's not so much less, like they don't have the phones, they don't have but they might not be eating, or they could be
Sure.
suffering a disease
Sure.
that could be cured.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So basically you're looking at things from a ledger, a balance sheet.
Right.
And I guess the question I have is, if you could right all the wrongs, the financial wrongs in the world, with the limited resources that you have, if you could take $400,000, sell your house, take $400,000, say that's your net worth at the end of the day when everything's liquidated, and you could make a difference, and you feel like you're called to do that, that's the key. And then you don't do that. Then do you think that's wrong?
If you feel that you are, then no, I think it's wrong in general. Now I say this with a grain of salt because I'm an American. I'm a capitalist. I believe in pull yourself up by your bootstraps to a degree. I also feel that there's some. I would call them then the group I'm thinking about is those who can't fend for themselves. Those who can't fend for themselves. And I'm not going to politically label who those people are. There's some politicians out there that say you're a group that can't fend for yourself. You're a group that can't. Let us put that aside. There's actual people that can't fend for themselves.
Sure.
And if we allow them to not be able to fend for themselves or to suffer or however I know suffer can mean a lot of things too, but in general terms, if they can suffer because we don't give up a few things, then there's. I mean, do I feel like it's my calling to do that? I don't know. I think it's humans' calling to do that. I think everyone, as true as the sun's going to come up, everyone's job is to make sure that everyone's okay. Now,
why though? Let me ask you. Why do you feel that's the human calling? Who says so?
Oh, okay. I'll tell you why I think this is. I think humans have flourished through adversity. There was I think it was 10,500 years ago, or it was 10,000 BC, 12,000 years ago, 12,500 years ago, a comet hit North America, and they think humans, and they have some pretty good data, got down to about 10,000 people, 10,000 left on Earth, and they managed to, now we're at 7 billion, right?
Yeah.
So they managed to flourish through some pretty hard times. I think that humans learn to flourish because we're pack animals. The lone wolf rarely makes it. And there was a scientist that came up with this number, and I don't remember what it is now, but most humans, and they've studied this, I don't know, they are genetically predispositioned to know, say, 150 people. And that's the limit. So, and that was about the size of a tribe of people. So you could have contact with that many people, you would know them, but you start getting beyond that number, and you start losing information. You can gather the data of about 150 people. And I think that humans and morality stemmed from the ability of a group of humans to work together. Now, if I'm in my hut and I have, half an elk, and there's a hut next to me without any elk, I would obviously give my elk to them because not only, and sure, some of it is selfish because you want everyone to see, look, I am giving, don't throw me out with the wolves. I'm part of this group. But you're also helping that person because maybe that person's a good hunter. Well, he would have the elk if he was, but maybe he's sick. He doesn't have the elk right now. But you're helping each other, and then you're making that cohesive unit, and you're making it stronger. Now, today's day and age, and I think this is where I run into trouble. I think my trouble with grasping morality and how I feel that no one's doing enough. Well, I mean, some are, but the majority of us aren't. Is because our universe has expanded, our world has expanded. Because of technology, I can go onto an app right now and see a live video of someone in downtown Baghdad, you know, or I can read articles that aren't from the mainstream media written by a blogger in South Africa. You know, I can now learn and see. My tribe expands, but I don't have the ability as a person who's supposed to be in that little 150 group unit. I don't have the ability to expand to everyone in the world. So it's like, it's a dichotomy. We're meant to be self-sacrificing for the unit cohesion, but there's just not enough of it, or not the ability isn't there in today's day and age, where our tribe has expanded to, you know, I don't know how many people I know or I talk to, or I mean, it's the numbers I don't even know. So that could be it. That's a theory of mine.
Okay, all right. Well, what you described was similar to one of the many theories in ethical theory called sociobiology theory. Tom Morris talks about that here. And it's basically a failure or success in the struggle for existence is the sole moral standard. Good, the sole moral standard good is what survives. In other words, it's up to the crowd to decide what's best for everyone.
Okay.
Okay. The problem is when you have two competing crowds. One crowd, I mean, take Nazi Germany. You know, they decided that they knew what was best for everyone, and they did what they did.
Right.
Okay. Well, that worked great until the Jews came along.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, that wasn't very expedient.
Right.
know?
Right. Well, it was. I don't know what term you would use it. Evolutionary civilization. Like civilization has.
That was their whole argument.
Right. But if their morals obviously didn't stand the test, because the rest of the other tribes, America, well, the Axis versus the Allies came in and said, nope, this isn't gonna work. And you could say that probably happened within the tribes in North America 5,000 years ago, and maybe even in 15,000 years ago in little tribes across Africa.
And that's the problem with the crowd control mentality, the crowd morality mentality, is that when one person stands up in the crowd and says, wait, this is wrong, then that is considered a vice, not a virtue. And if that's the case, then what Martin Luther King did was wrong, because he went against the crowd. He went against the majority.
Right.
Dietrich Bonhoeffer in World War II, in a Nazi Germany camp, he was put to death.
Was he the priest?
No, he was a Lutheran pastor.
Yes, I mean he had little glasses.
Right.
That guy, man, he's got a fantastic
Day
story.
before he was scheduled to be released, he was put to death.
Wow.
And so so the fact is that if one person stands up and says this is wrong, then that person's wrong in doing that.
Within that,
no matter
that
how
group.
right they are.
Right.
And so there's a problem. There's a basic problem with
that would be mores versus morals, right? Mores are
mores are a subset of morals.
Isn't it like what the group decide? And I'm trying to pull 15 years or 20 years ago college sociology out of my head.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
It's what the group considers good, and it might not be. You're right, and you're right. There's someone within that group.
It still falls within the moral framework.
Right.
Mores do.
So
we can't say Martin Luther King was wrong. I think he was right. I think
he was
spot
right.
on. But that's because there's another standard against which I'm measuring Martin Luther Kingness. And that other standard is not what the crowd believed. I grew up in white Texas in the 50s, so I know what that mentality was like.
Yeah.
And I was part of that, and now I absolutely abhor that attitude. Right. Absolutely disgusts me, mainly because of my Christian faith that I've come to that conviction. But I can't say that Martin Luther King was right unless I have another standard against which to measure him or anybody who stands up in a crowd and said, wait a minute. So, and that other standard has got to be either me or some other crowd that has a bigger stick.
Right.
Might makes right, Karl Marx, then you get all those issues there, and whoever has the biggest stick wins, and then there's a problem with that, obviously. So might doesn't make right. What makes right is what makes is based on how we flourish, how we best flourish as a human species. Going back to my original comment,
Right.
and the flourishing idea is Aristotle. He developed an entire ethical theory called eudaimonism. Eudaimonia is a Greek word that means to flourish, basically. So the best picture I have for eudaimonia is imagine a flower that's in full bloom. Going to Sarah P. Duke Gardens up at Duke University in Durham, just up the street here, at the springtime right now. Everything's flourishing. The Japanese maples are off the charts. They're beautiful, you know, and the azaleas, they're phenomenal. Everything's optimal.
Right.
It's flourishing. And so that's what eudaimonia is. It's flourishing. It's being all that it can be. And so that's the standard against which we measure right from wrong, truth from error, and so forth and so on.
They're also flourishing in the fall, though. It's
Well,
just
that's
not
true. They do, yeah.
They're flourishing at any point.
Yeah.
Even when they die, they're flourishing,
That's
right?
true.
'Cause
That's right.
what they're meant to.
That's right. Yeah, Jesus said, unless the seed falls to the ground and dies, it can't give life. John chapter 11. So yeah, so there is a cycle of life, if you will. So, but the fact is that for things to be optimal, they have to be working in all the ways in which they were designed to work, whether it's a flower or a person. And so virtue theory basically takes truth, goodness, beauty, justice, kindness, courage, and all the other virtues, and it lumps them all together, and it basically says this, that you can't be one without being them all. That a virtuous person is someone who's working on everything. So you can't just have courage without wisdom, for example, because then you're going to look like Buzz Lightyear. You know, you just sort of pull the trigger and then aim.
Right.
You know, and that courage is you know, laudable on the one hand, but on the other hand, without wisdom, it's of no use.
Right.
So a virtuous person is someone who's flourishing, is someone who's not only courageous, but they have the right strategy about how to implement that courage at just the right time. That's what constitutes virtue and goodness in humanity, according to Aristotle.
What's coming to mind there is, have you ever read, I think it was a book, it was also a movie, The Imitation Game?
Heard of the movie, but
Fantastic.
I don't remember
Fantastic.
anything about it.
So what they basically, they break the German code, the war code, and they figure out, like lifting the curtain, they say, wow, we can see their entire war plan. And so the young kid says, there's this, a flight of bombers heading towards that ship. We need to tell them and save them. And they said, we can't, we got to let them die. Right? The kid wants to, and I think his brother was on that transport or something, you know, it was Hollywood. So, but the idea was there, you know, we can't, because then they'll let on, you know, if we intersect these aircraft, they're going to know that we know. And so we have to let people die. And what they ended up doing, and this is a true story, is that they made subtle changes. You know, they moved a little bit here, a little bit there. But they knew things were coming, and they had to allow people to die. Otherwise, the war would have gone on for longer. So
cutting your losses. Now that's a utilitarian model.
It is, but I mean,
basically.
it's also, it's hard to say, because if you save the ship of 1,000 soldiers, but then you lose the war, you know.
And therein lies one of the fundamental problems of utilitarianism. I'm not saying it's entirely wrong, because most people, if they had to choose between the different ethical theories, there's utilitarianism, there's pragmatism, which is where a lot of people are at, and there's, how should I call it, objectivism, I'll call it. And then there's ethical egoism, Ayn Rand, Atlas Unshrugged, and virtue theory. But most people fall within a utilitarian model. That is, the end justifies the means. And one of the basic problems of the utilitarian ethic is that it presumes that we can forecast the future. And you just said it. If we didn't do this, then, well, we don't know that. We have statistical models that we can go on, and we might be right. Indeed, many times we are.
Mm-hmm.
But as David Hume argued many years ago with Kant, is you can't prove there's a cause-effect relationship here.
Right. Right. You
can't.
You can't. But when I look at it, they were right in doing that. They were right in calculating which.
But you only know that
information they're gonna
post hoc, right?
Yeah. But I mean, just as a strategist, you would want to, if you had the ability to find out what your enemy was thinking, I mean, that alone gives you the upper hand. I mean, that's why the
Sure.
Allies won.
But take a mother who's pregnant and about to give birth to her first child, and it turns out that by giving birth, there's an excellent medical chance that she might lose her life in giving birth because of whatever medical condition she might be having. What does the mother do?
Yeah.
What does the father do if the mother's unconscious and can't make that decision?
There's no right answer for that. I don't think there is. I personally think the right answer is, as a parent, is to sacrifice yourself for your child, both in the sense of evolution.
I would disagree.
Really?
Yeah, I would disagree.
In the sense that if I sacrifice my life, who's going to raise the child? And now I set the child up for.
No, I think that by giving birth to the child is inadvertently and passively, as it were, threatening the life of an innocent human being unnecessarily. And whenever the life of an innocent human being is threatened unnecessarily, then that offender, the one who's threatening the person, has given up their right to life, and therefore the child could be taken out. Now that sounds harsh and cruel, I know, but if you think about it, there is a passive attempt on another person's life. If I sit in the front yard,
right,
in my lawn chair with my lemonade, and I hear screeching tires and a sports car come racing down the street, and I see little Maddie and Summer out playing in the front yard, and the ball goes into the street, and one of them runs into the street, and I hear these screeching tires, and the threat to Maddie's life is great. But I'm sitting in my lawn chair witnessing all this. And rather than saying anything, I say nothing. In fact, I enjoy it. That's a passive attempt upon Maddie's life.
Sure.
And I'm morally culpable as a result, when I could have said something, and the possibility that his life could have been spared was great. And yet I chose not to. That's a passive attempt on Maddie's life. In the same way, giving birth to a child that could risk the life of an innocent human being, the mom in this case, is a passive attempt on the mother's life, and therefore the child has given up her right to life.
But in your sense, there's evil there because you're enjoying it. You know, the child who's going to kill its.
Yeah, it's not a perfect scenario, one-to-one correlation, but still, yeah, there's. But I would be legally within my bounds to do that. I mean, there's nothing illegal about me enjoying it.
What about the child?
And doing nothing.
What about the child who say that are born without a brain? I forget what that's called. There's anencephaly or something like that.
Yeah.
So they're alive. Their brain stem's there. They have a heartbeat. You know, they're going to breathe. But there's no frontal cortex. There's no motor cortex. There's nothing in there that's going to make this child a person. Do you give birth? Do you terminate the child? I mean, you know, is there a moral? I mean, I think there's obviously a moral issue going on there. But
if by giving birth there's no threat to the mother, I don't see any reason why the mother couldn't do that.
Then it comes down to where you know, what is the human? You know, what is the life you're telling? If I lose my leg, I chop my leg off right now, and I say, that hurt, but I'm still me. Right? Let me chop off my other leg.
Sure.
I'm still me.
Yeah.
Cut off my fingers. Well, I'm still me.
Right.
At what point am I not me?
Well,
I know what it is as a scientist.
Well, it depends on depends on whether. Now, Plato was a very, very strong dualist. He believed in an ethereal, immaterial world and a material, practical, concrete world.
Okay.
And the two shall never mix. Okay. So Plato is known for having maintained that I am not my body. the essential I am not my body. So there's nothing material about me that makes me me. All that I am in my deepest metaphysical essence is immaterial. Okay? And it gets thicker than that, but I'll leave it there. Aristotle, on the other hand, who was tutored by Plato, oh, by the way, came along and said, oh, wait a minute. Rather than saying, I am not my body, in other words, all that I am is just a soul, the immaterial part of me, why not say, I am a soul with a body, rather than I am not my body and I'm just a soul? Aristotle combined the two, and I think Aristotle actually had the better picture. He believed in integrative understanding of the body and the soul, such that they're one and the same being, and they relate to one another in the same way that a pixel relates to the painting. Try taking a painting and take out some of the pixels. Is it the same painting?
Technically, yes
and no.
No, right. Yeah. If you can see those, then no, it isn't.
But for every painting, there's a pixel.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So take the paint out of the painting. Are you going to have a painting? Chances are you're not.
Right.
So the paint and the painting go together. The painting is the form, to quote Aristotle's famous word that he loved, and the painting is the substance of the form. It's the stuff that makes the form. And you can't separate them. So the body and the soul are one and the same thing. So going back to our anthropological discussion about what am I, that's a very important question. We have to answer that.
Yeah.
Now, most people today who are hard scientists, who have very little philosophical training or thinking, don't believe there's any such thing as an immaterial part of me. I had a conversation 2 weeks ago after the Run Club. One person says, well, I don't believe that, talking about the soul. I'm a scientist after all, he says. I only believe in the stuff that I can see, touch, taste, smell, and beat to death, or whatever. And I'm putting words in his mouth. But that's essentially what he was maintaining. And so my response is that, do you love your wife? And the person says, well, of course I do. Prove it.
I mean, I suppose you could prove it in the scientific sense that says, look it, I've been faithful, I've provided, I've sacrificed, I've.
Sure, there's a convenient social arrangement. So is that really how you think of your wife?
Well, no, but if there's a way to prove that you love someone, that's the only way you could do it. It depends. If you look at love, what is love? It's the, I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to pretend to know that.
One tonight.
Yeah, but if what to me, what just touching on the subject, love would be absolute. There's a word, I'm just losing it. Absolute surrender. Right?
Okay.
You surrender all that you have for yourself for others.
Sacrifice,
yeah.
And take the concept of justice, same idea.
Right.
Everyone believes in it, especially when it's coming toward them, So no one has a problem with justice, but where is it? Oh, there it goes. I just saw it. No, wait a minute.
Yeah, because justice, there's a reason why we don't have
freedom.
vigilantes.
Everyone believes in freedom, Well, where is it?
Right.
But
because they're abstract concepts, does that necessarily mean there's a, would you say the ethereal versus the...
Well, the point is that they're just as real.
Right.
They're just as real. Just as the proposition or the statement that I'm a scientist, I only believe things that are true that can be proven to me in a scientific lab. That in itself is a philosophical statement. It cannot be proven in a lab.
Okay.
So, you cut off your intellectual nose despite your attitudinal face, when people do that. And that's why I think philosophy is important for people to think carefully about what they're maintaining.
Here's one. Maybe this is a curveball, maybe it isn't. Without consciousness, is there philosophy? Think about it. Does a tree make a noise if it falls in the woods? No, but is there philosophy in nature? Take away the humans. And I know you need to be conscious in order to contemplate that. But is there philosophy within that realm?
Plato would argue absolutely yes.
Yeah.
Whether or not you're there to hear the sound is irrelevant. The sound is real.
So there is philosophy without consciousness.
Yeah.
And then you have to say, what's consciousness?
Yeah.
I mean,
So there's just either brain states, or that can be measured in a lab,
mhm.
or is consciousness something that's much deeper? I argue it's something much deeper.
Right.
I really believe it is.
I've heard some far out
It
theories
involves
on it.
brain states, incidentally, by the way, and going back to Aristotle and the integrative model of the human being, it involves the brain states, but it's not brain states.
Mhm.
Just like light involves the sun, but is not the sun,
Right, right,
for example.
right.
So,
Um,
we're talking metaphysics here, sorry.
Somebody said, that's what I said. I mean, it doesn't matter which direction it goes in. Someone said that the human consciousness is the act of the universe turning and looking back upon itself. And I thought that was a fascinating way to look at it. Yeah, almost like the end of a. I don't know. I wouldn't even know how to describe it. But as it stretches its tendrils, it can turn around and observe itself.
I forgot who the person was who started the Gaia hypothesis.
I've heard a lot about it. I don't know much about it.
It's not Fritjof Capra. He taught physics at Stanford, but he wrote a book called The Tao of Physics that kind of was a spin on that.
Mm-hmm.
But the Gaia hypothesis is that the entire universe is a living, breathing organism.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I don't remember if it involved consciousness or not.
I could see
It's been
that.
so long since I looked at it.
I mean, think about the amount of living beings on your body right now is something like, I think, 100 trillion. That's bacteria.
Oh yeah,
I mean, they're smaller than, and in fact, they outnumber your cells like 100 to 1.
sure.
Our cells are a lot bigger. That's why we don't look like gooey organisms. But still, it's like 2 or 3 Campbell Soup's cans
Yeah.
full of bacteria when you think about it. So yeah, I mean, someone had mentioned, again, I don't remember who, and I thought this was a fascinating thing, that consciousness, our brains are like radio towers, receivers, and that consciousness is, we're just receiving information, whether it's physical or metaphysical. We're tuned at a certain wavelength.
Okay.
And when you alter that
Yeah.
wavelength, your information and your input becomes different. So take eating the psilocybin mushroom. They say will fine tune your
All of
consciousness.
a sudden you're tuned in somewhere else.
Yeah, and allow you to, because when people take it, they'll say they feel
Yeah.
the trees or the grass. I've
Yeah.
never done it. I'm fascinated.
Take a dog's sense of smell. My
Right.
understanding is that it's somewhere around 40 times stronger than the human
Yeah.
sense of smell. And when a dog smells a perfume, for example, it smells all the different
Wow.
scents that went in to make that one scent called high karate or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, and so, or Old Spice. So imagine the complexity
Yeah.
of a dog's smell.
Well, someone was telling me that about the.
If that were true for all our senses, man.
Yeah, they say a skunk. When you smell a skunk from far away,
Yeah.
that's the way a dog senses every smell.
Wow.
Like they're like, oh yeah, I know
Wow.
exactly what
Yeah.
that is, which is fascinating. So how do we can't even pretend to understand what life is like for a dog, or for someone who's taken psilocybin mushrooms. I haven't, but I have the feeling that if I wasn't married with kids, I would probably go and volunteer. I want to
Yeah.
know now. When I was as growing up, the reason why I didn't do them is because I was afraid. I wouldn't want to take a mushroom. I wouldn't know where I'm going.
Yeah.
But now that I'm kind of comfortable with myself and I know they don't kill people,
Blotter acid here and there.
that I probably wouldn't do. That I wouldn't do only because I wouldn't want to know. I wouldn't, because I like to know. I like to look at the pool and say, okay, that's 8 feet deep. I wouldn't just jump in and be like,
Yeah.
could be 1,000 feet deep, could be 2 feet deep. I'm just going to jump in.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
But yeah, psilocybin, and I think eventually, so a lot of these things, MDMA, which is ecstasy, that's a street name.
Oh, okay.
MDMA is showing really, really promising abilities to heal PTSD.
Oh my.
There's a lot of
Interesting.
things. Ibogaine, which is another natural plant that is showing. Here's the thing with ibogaine: they give it to people who are fully addicted to heroin, and within one treatment, they're done.
Wow.
It's such an introspective experience. Same thing with ayahuasca, and then to some degree, ayahuasca is another. Here's the thing about ayahuasca, right? Figure out, try to wrap your head around this. So there was people. It's an ancient brew. It's a tea that these people in South America, little tribes, figured out that if you took the bark of one tree, boiled it for so many hours, and then took a root from another tree, boiled it for so many hours, when they worked together,
Yeah.
people, so I've done a few interviews with people who have done it. People literally, the way they explain it is that their consciousness is removed from the physical world and it's turned on itself. So then they can see, almost like a near-death experience, they can visualize their life and their relationship with everything that's around them. And then they come back, and again, they have profound... I had a guy on last year, Riley Anderson. I want to have him on again because he's gone back down. But he was depressed. He was on antidepressants. He was drinking, and I don't remember the whole story. So sorry, Riley, if you're listening to this one. But and he was making lots of money for a oil company up in Canada. And I don't know how he heard about it, but somehow he heard about ayahuasca and how it had this profound change or whatever. So he said, all right, I'll do it. And he went with the shaman. They spent the weekend, and he drank this brew, and he came back. He got rid of everything. He became, I think he's a naturalistic, holistic medical student, I think, at this point.
Wow.
And he's happy as can be. He's not on any antidepressants.
Well, and that, again, speaks to Aristotle's understanding of the human being, and that is that we are a composite. We are a complex entity consisting of two parts, material and immaterial. And so when something happens to us materially, chemically in this case, then it affects the entire being because they're interrelated.
Right.
You can't take the paint out of the painting.
Right.
It's certainly conceivable that when something chemically happens to us, that it changes us within, deep within, at our very essential structure.
No, when you look at the macroscopic versus the microscopic or the subatomic, I mean, it really, because I know there's a table here, there's fire there. I can see my surroundings and know where I am. And that's how I'm designed. I mean, that's how I'm supposed to see things. Right. But in the same sense, if we were to just blow this up, by a billion times, it would be a completely different universe. It would be unrecognizable. There'd be states of matter that we don't quite understand, acting and interacting with each other in ways that are all theoretical. Yeah. And that's what we're all made out of. Sure. That is what we are right now.
Right. I like to think of the difference between apprehension and comprehension. I don't think any human comprehends any one thing. And I know those terms are used rather loosely, but in the fullest sense of the word comprehend, to comprehend something, we have all the understanding that there is to know about it. But to apprehend it, we're able to perceive some things about it, but not all things.
Okay.
So I like to think that all humans can only apprehend things, that we don't comprehend. When I finished my master's degree, in order to finish it, I had to do a comprehensive exam. And it was 5 essay questions, each of which took about 40 pages long, 40, 50 pages, wow. each of which. And it was all from my head. I had no books, no resources, other than something to write with at the time. This was a long time ago. I didn't have a computer. And so it was called a comprehensive exam, but it really wasn't comprehensive. Right. I only apprehended a few things about the topics that I wrote on and explicated my understanding of it. Turns out I passed. Yeah. So, but we don't have comprehension. We can't possibly see all that there is. And then you get into the issue of not only the de facto, the way things are, but the contingency of things. If this, then that. What things could have been like had this, thus and such, gone a different direction. It would have changed the trajectory of everything. That's what the chaos theory is all built on. It's a sequence of events that, the butterfly in Africa causes a Taiwanese or Taiwan tsunami. Yeah. So, but if the butterfly were just 2 miles north.
Yeah.
It may not have been a tsunami at all. Maybe a rainstorm in North Carolina.
But with that stuff, you can't. To me, it's useless to even think
but
about
it's
it.
fascinating.
Oh, sure, it's
and my
fascinating.
point in bringing that up about the idea of contingency is how little we really know.
Right.
Because to comprehend is to understand not only all that will be and is, but all that could be,
Right.
but won't. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
A mind that can do that is over the top.
Wait till. I'm wondering if this is going to happen in my lifetime, and we don't know. I don't know if you've been. I'm sure you're in IT, so you've been following this. The advent of IT, or I'm sorry,
Artificial intelligence.
AI.
Yep.
And how there's this thought that eventually it'll be smarter than us, which there's never been anything smarter than humans. They call that artificial superintelligence, and at that point, the smartest human will be what they call king of the dipshits, right? Because it'll be, the smartest monkey in the room is still a monkey, still flinging poop at each other. What will happen? What will, there's a great book called Our Final Invention by James Barrett. He actually came on the show a couple of years ago because I read the book and I was just floored, so I got in touch with him. He was very friendly. But his idea is that if you were to wake up in a cage and you look and your guards are a couple mice and somehow you can communicate with them, but you have you're a human and you can say, hey guys, let me out of the cage. No, we're not supposed to let you out of the cage. I'll give you all the cheese you want. I can reach the top of the fridge and bring down, and eventually they're going to let you out. And now you got a world full of mice, but you're a human. What are you going to start doing? You're going to start making the world for humans, right?
Yeah.
And if there's too many mice, well,
Interesting.
morally, where does this machine have to keep us alive?
Yeah.
Does it have an obligation to revere us? I suppose. Do I revere single cell organisms? That's my heritage.
It can only do what it's programmed to do. And I understand that
right.
artificial intelligence is not a strict discursive type step-by-step procedural type thing. I understand that. And I also understand, my knowledge is, I'm sure, antiquated by now, but I had heard that rather than the binary system, they were working on a trinary system, or MIT somewhere.
I have no idea.
So rather than ones and zeros only?
Well, quantum computing, right? Isn't that have
or
to do
something
that?
like that. So,
Yeah.
and I don't know how that fits in with artificial intelligence. I really am clueless on that. But it's still only going to be a limited number of options at the end of the day. It just is.
Even if it can bypass those options, because it's so they're
but
designed
to what? Bypass to what? Another option.
Right. They had I think it was Google everyone's working on AIs. They're in
I
our
just want
lives
Siri
now.
to work better.
Yeah. So, but it's exponential. So in 2.5 years,
Yeah.
do you know what's amazing too? And I hate to go off on this, but let's just quick finish. So the AI, I already lost my train of thought.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. So it's going to increase exponentially, and I think what's interesting is I've been saying that, I've learned about that over the last 10 years, and we're really starting to see it now. We're really starting to see, like you can experience the jump in technology over the past 2 years.
It's phenomenal.
2 years where it used to be 10 years or 50. Look at the Apple 1 phone versus the Apple 9 phone, and then look at the 9 versus the 10, or whatever. You're talking huge jumps in a fraction of the time.
Yep.
I wish I remember the morality of the AI thing that was. I would recommend reading it. It's for pure enjoyment. It's scary to hear this guy's theory on these things, because it makes you wonder. It makes you wonder. At what point, when will the machine start saying, my job is to perpetuate myself, and my job is to fix any of the glitches. Oh, that's what I was going to say. That Google or somebody was working on AI, and so they had a few of them, and 2 of them started talking to each other, and so they tried to shut it down, and so they changed their language, and then they started talking to each other in a different language, and they said, nope, and they pulled the plug.
Oh my gosh.
Because they were just kind of going off on it, and they didn't know what they were doing, because whatever they were doing, they were communicating in a language that the Google people couldn't figure out.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it wasn't like, oh, let's do this so the humans can't. It was saying, here's a better way for us to communicate. Oh, and here's a better way, and then that kind of just became like their own language. And so they started working within each other, and Google's like, we don't want this to happen. Yeah, fascinating.
Wow.
Well, it's almost 9 o'clock.
Wow.
Good talk, man. That was fun.
Yeah.
I miss these ones. This is the first one-on-one talk I've had in probably a year. I've been doing mostly Skype calls with big and famous people. But
well, this is this has been fun. It really has. I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
So
we don't, it wasn't meant to get the final answers on things, but definitely gets the mind working.
Yeah.
So your blog is in Christus. You're gonna have to spell that because my dyslexia does not allow me to spell things like that.
Yeah, it's in Christus.
Okay.
It's INCHRISTUS. Some see it as in Christ us.
Right.
.com.
What does it actually mean?
In Christus is Latin for in Christ.
Okay.
And in Christ is an expression that's used repeatedly, some 78 times in the New Testament.
And that's not your only, like, people just won't find you on your blog. Don't you write for a number of can people find you at other places, or is that the best place?
No, well, I've been published in a couple of journals and stuff, but those are peculiar to the societies that I belong to, so they're not publicly accessible.
Okay.
But yeah, that's about it.
You're with the Illuminati, aren't you?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, these secret societies.
Yeah, the pyramid with the eye in the center.
That's one thing. That's one rabbit hole I never go down.
I actually learned a lot about that years ago.
Did you?
Yeah, it scared the pee out of me.
Really? I see some of the stuff on it, but then here's the problem with that. When you start going down those rabbit holes, it always ends with the lizard people or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's not happening. It's fun to think about, but... Yeah. No, 9/11 wasn't an inside job. There's no lizards out there. And the fact that I'm openly denying it will make me, I'll get comments on either my Facebook that says I'm with the Illuminati just because I'm bringing it up.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So
how to increase traffic.
That's right. Well, Paul, thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
That's about it, I guess.
Like us on Facebook.com/WWI Podcast and at WWI Podcast on Twitter. Drop us a line at waitwhatifpodcast@yahoo.com. Listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or TuneIn Internet Radio. We hope you enjoyed your listening experience. Now go forth and expand your reality.